I would like to take this moment to welcome everybody to the first official episode of the Outside the Octagon podcast, where every episode that we do here is a main event of the evening. Ain't that right, Jude?
Yes, sir.
So to get started off, I'm your host, Charleston Payne, alongside the co-host here, Jude Starns. Jude, it's good to have you today.
Great to be back. I'm excited to be on the mic, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. We're actually getting to do a full episode this time. Really excited to bring what we got to you guys. Got a lot on the table that we want to talk about. You know, this is not going to really be the typical episode, but because the UFC 300 is going to be tomorrow, we're going to really be hammering down on that today. So we're going to give you our predictions, our picks, as well as just break down every fight just because it's such a huge event. But the typical thing you could expect out of a Outside the Octagon episode is just truthfully Outside the Octagon stuff.
Yeah, and also, I just want to mention, we're going to have some super big guests on. It's going to be great podcast coming up in the future, and we're going to be doing some nice giveaways.
Absolutely. It's going to be awesome whenever we get some things going. We're going to schedule up some giveaways, probably start working towards getting some merch around the 5th or 6th episode, I would probably say. One thing for you guys to look forward to, our next episode is going to drop next Friday, and it's going to be featuring Liz Carmouche. I'm super excited about that. She was the first ever UFC women's fighter. She fought Ronda Rousey in 2013. She is still a fighter for PFL, which makes me really excited to go into the next topic about the PFL. We had that PFL first event last Wednesday, which featured the heavyweights and the women's flyweights. And first of all, Liz killed it. She did what she had to do out there. She had an absolutely great fight. She picked the girl apart. She beat Juliana the first time by KO, the second time by sub, and the third time she beat her by decision. So she literally proved in every aspect that she is the better fighter in that situation. And the crazy thing about her fighting Juliana is Juliana, aside from fighting Liz, is 12-0. And she's got 3 blemishes on that record because of Liz.
And Liz is coming off a Bellator championship where she defended her belt multiple times.
Right, yeah. I mean, she had, I want to say, like 5 or 6 title defenses in Bellator, so I'm excited to see what she could do in the PFL. You know, she's a very exciting fighter, former Marine, so very excited to be able to talk to her about her life before the Octagon came around and her life going forward, you know, and how it's been, how she got into this thing. And I'm excited to bring that to you guys, the first guest episode.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode. Definitely suggest tuning in.
Absolutely. Now, the PFL had some very interesting fights this past week. I'd like to think so. What do you think?
Some great fights. And if you're unfamiliar with the PFL, they actually incentivize winning by knockout or submission in the earlier rounds because they do a point system. Right. So there's playoffs in the PFL. What is it? 4 regular season fights or 3?
Yeah, you get 4 regular season fights. So each fighter comes in and they fight every 8 weeks. Every 8 weeks you have to go out and fight again. If you win by decision, I believe you get 1 point. If you win, if you lose, obviously you get 0 points. If you miss weight, you get a point docked off of what you could have gotten. First round finish, I want to say is worth 5 points, maybe 6. I could be wrong, but and it's just really cool how it works. You know, like the whole point system as a whole. You know, it's a very awesome thing. Incentivizing, like Jude said, incentivizing the finishes. It's awesome to be able to see people go out there, especially those heavyweight fights, man, because those heavyweight fights, they had some guys absolutely throwing them.
Yeah, and it keeps people hungry because if you're a decision fighter, you're barely going to scrape into the playoffs. You have to be perfect. So it incentivizes the knockouts and submissions and makes the fights more interesting, I believe, as a whole.
Right, yeah, because everybody, I mean, and then at the end of the season, each champion from each division gets awarded $1 million. And one thing that stood out to me about Liz, you know, obviously we're going to speak about this in the next episode when we have that interview down with her. But one thing that stuck out to me about her is she walked away from Bellator while she had the belt just for the opportunity to go fight in this PFL thing where it's more active. And what always impressed me about her throughout her whole career, whether it was with the UFC, Bellator, or PFL, she's always been a very active fighter.
Been a very active fighter, and she's climbing up there in age, and she's still getting it done. She's still winning.
Yeah, she's still winning. You know, she beat a young girl, Juliana Velasquez, the last fight, and I don't know. I think she's still got a high ceiling at this point. You know, even though she's been in this MMA thing for 11 years now, as far as doing it at a professional level, being tracked with the UFC and stuff like that. You know, I think she's just built a very good a very good representation of herself, and she's got a very high ceiling. I mean, still to this point.
And she's obviously a fighter that can go out there and beat anybody in the UFC's women's division or in the PFL or the Bellator. She's proved it over and over again.
Yeah, 6 of her last fights were finishes. So, and she's an absolute beast. I'm very excited to have her behind the mics. But anyway, that's going to lead us into our next topic, which is the main event here, UFC 300. It's going to be tomorrow, and I'm super, super stoked about that. How do you feel about it?
Biggest event of the year, maybe biggest event of the UFC ever. You could make that argument. It's tough to beat UFC 200, 100, even 299. I mean, that's a great card. It's going to be tough to top. They're saying it's going to top it. I believe it can. But UFC 299 was a great card. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, the fighters are going to really have to produce. But, I mean, I think to look at the card from the outside looking in, if you look at the card and you don't think that Dana White absolutely did magic with this, I think you're just a casual fan at that point.
No, and
because there's 12 fighters in this card from the early prelims. Like, the very first fight of the night is going to feature a former champion. Yeah. 12 fighters on this card are either current or former champions and have held the belt at one point.
Yeah, and I believe they might as well just go ahead and paint the mat red, because by the end of the night, there's no way this mat's not just painted up red. There's some absolute warriors. All these guys are going to go for finishes. It's going to be an exciting card. I don't think you're going to be able to shut your eyes. Only person who needs to shut their eyes, maybe the kids. Put them to sleep, because there's going to be a lot of people going to sleep in this card.
Yeah, I mean, I fully believe that there's going to be a lot of action, man. I mean, I know the UFC doesn't reward fighters the same way the PFL does and give you the extra points or anything like that for getting a first round or an early finish, but regardless, there's going to be a lot of finishes. And one thing that happened in the press conference is Dana White said that they were going to increase the fighters' bonuses. Instead of a $50K bonus for getting a knockout or a finish in any fight, which is what the UFC usually would give, instead of doing that, he's going to do $300K for the bonus, $300,000.
Yeah,
to get a finish, which is automatically an incentive.
Yeah, that's huge.
If you ask me,
don't care if you're a millionaire. I don't care if you're Conor McGregor. 300,000 bonus, humongous.
Right, and then looking right into the first fight, we'll go ahead and get started on this with some of our predictions here. You got a bantamweight bout between Deiveson Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt. I mean, Garbrandt held the title for a while there. He stepped down for a while, didn't fight for, I believe it was over a year. And he's back in it now. His last fight, these guys are both coming off wins. I think, me personally, Garbrandt's the underdog, but I still got a good feeling about him.
Yeah, I might have to agree with you there. I think Garbrandt, he's still young. He's coming off a world championship. I mean, he ran the division for a minute. I don't think he's done yet. He's only 32 years old. He's still got a lot left in the tank.
He's got a lot of time to go. I'm excited for that fight. And the fact of the matter is that you have a former champion opening the night. That is the first fight. And that's just ridiculous. That's
and it's with a veteran, Figueroa. They're both veterans. I mean, they're both insanely good, been at the top of the division for a long time now.
Yeah, Figueiredo's always been one of those guys. He's kind of like a gatekeeper in a sense for that bantamweight division. You know, if you can get past him, then you can kind of move up the ladder. But that's where you know you've made it in the MMA world, if you're in that division.
Yeah.
But moving on to the next fight, we got a lightweight fight between two, honestly, trailblazers for MMA as well, in my opinion. You got Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. Both of these guys are getting up there in age, but they're both beasts. They've both been good for a while. They've both been around, been through the ringer. And quite frankly, myself personally, I could see this being a very interesting fight. I could see it being a good bout. I don't really know who I have, but I think if I'm leaning in any direction, I got to lean with Bobby Green here.
Yeah, and Jim Miller has the most fights in UFC history. So he's
wins.
He's been in the game for a long time. Bobby Green, little younger, little more significant strikes per minute. I see Bobby Green taking this, but Jim Miller's still a great fighter. Should be an awesome fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to. So far, I mean, if you really do line those up, that's the first two fights of the night, and those could truthfully headline any fight night that the UFC has. The free events that they have for ESPN Plus, those are both of those fights could headline already. I mean, I'm telling you, those are main events right there.
Great fights
in any other situation. Next up, you got Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez in the women's strawweight division. The number 4 fighter Andrade facing off against the number 6 ranked fighter Marina. That's going to be an exciting fight. I think if I'm taking anything on that one, I would probably recommend going with the fight to end with a decision. I would probably assume, Marina, she's a very big decision fighter. She doesn't really get to finish super often. The average fight time there is about 14 minutes for her. Andrade, if there is a finish, Andrade will be the one to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I really think with this being a early prelim that this fight could be a finish, and I think Andrade will get that done.
You think Andrade's going to get the win here?
I think she's going to get the finish in the early rounds.
I think if it goes to a finish, I think she wins. But if it goes to decision, I think Marina's got that.
Yeah, I agree.
On a personal
completely
level.
Agree with that completely.
And then to wrap up, this is just the early prelims, guys, that we're talking about here, which just, I know I've said that a lot throughout this episode already, but this card is just mind-boggling. It's truthfully mind-blowing whenever you're big into the MMA like Jude and I are. How do you feel about the card so far, like through the early prelims?
Oh, there's not a single fight that I'm going to miss.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not missing anything. And then the last for the early prelims, before we wrap those up, we got a lightweight bout again. It's going to be Jalen Turner facing off against Renato Money Moicano. That's going to be a very good fight. It's going to be very interesting. I think it could go either way. But me personally, I think I would probably lean towards Jalen Turner here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Jalen Turner is going to be a household name in the upcoming years. I think he's a great fighter. He's still coming up. He's got a few losses, but I think he's going to clean that up with a win against Bobby Green by knockout. I think he's ready to take off.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a beast. I'm super excited to see him fight. He's got a 77-inch reach for the lightweight division.
Humongous.
And that's absolute. Like, you got to think the biggest reach in MMA is John Jones at what? I believe 84-inch reach, if I'm not mistaken. 84-inch reach. And he's only got a 7-inch shorter reach, no diddy, than John Jones. And that's ridiculous for a lightweight guy.
Yeah, and Jalen Turner, significant strikes per minute, 6.02. And he has the submission of one average of 1.23. So he can get it done both ways. This guy's going to be a monster. I think he's a household name in the upcoming years. No disrespect to Marciano, but I think Jalen Turner wins this fight.
Yeah, definitely got Jalen Turner here. Now, moving on to the actual prelims here, we got a few fights, starting off with a featherweight bout between Sadiq Yusuff and Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez is already pretty much a fan favorite here, but sometimes you don't got to go with what all the fans say, Sometimes that's not the direct route to go. And I think with this case, I'm taking the underdog. I think I got to go Sadiq Yusuff.
Yeah, and this fight shows is almost a pick'em. But I think that Lopez should not be the favorite, slightly even. I think Yusuff is going to get this win. But I think it'll be a great fight.
Yeah, personally, I think Yusuff's the better fighter. Yusuff is coming off a loss though, and Diego Lopez obviously coming off his last fight with a win. Both are very interesting fighters, but I just think Sadiq has the edge here. He's 13-3 all time versus Diego being 23-6. It's kind of a toss up, the odds are close to being a pick'em, but I strongly lean towards Sadiq here.
Yeah, I think Sadiq at this point in his career has just slightly got the edge on Lopez, but I think they're both two younger, great featherweight guys that you're going to hear in the upcoming years, like I've said so many times in this episode. And that's what makes UFC 300 so great. A lot of veterans on it, but a lot of guys that's going to be household names in the upcoming years in their divisions.
Right. I mean, it's super exciting. Like, there's so many guys that we've already named that either have held the belt or will possibly hold the belt at some point. And we're only through the first fight of the prelims.
And this fight is going to be for the future of the game.
Right, so. Exactly. Especially for the featherweight division. That's super exciting to see that division on the rise, It has been pretty prevalent with the Volkanovski-Topuri is the most recent fight that really mattered in that division, in my opinion, and that was an absolutely insane fight. I had Ilya to win by knockout, and lucky enough for me, that ended up going my way. So
yes, sir.
Super very exciting division though. They got some absolute beasts in there, and these guys are hot on the rise. I think either guy that wins this fight could possibly be fighting for a title at some point.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Both these guys are going to be contenders in the featherweight division at some point in their career.
Right. Now, leading up to the next fight, we've got an absolute beast that has been around for a while. and she's a tank. Facing off against a lady that is making her UFC debut. You got a women's bantamweight bout with Holly Holm facing off against Kayla Harrison. Now, personally, in this fight, I don't know how you feel about it. I don't really know where I lean. You know, I think you could just take the fight to go to decision and leave it at that.
I think it goes to decision, but I think Kayla Harrison's going to win this fight. Holly Holm was a monster in the sport. She's an absolute dinosaur, though. Respectfully, she's a dinosaur. I mean, she's 42 years old.
Well,
everybody's time is going to expire at some point, and I think Holly Holm's just, her career's kind of done. Kayla Harrison's in the prime of her career right now, so I think she wins this fight.
I think Kayla Harrison can pull it off, but I also just don't sleep on Holly Holm for obvious reasons.
And Kayla Harrison absolutely ripped for a women's UFC fighter. Not saying that they're not ripped at all, but she's like six-pack abs. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah,
like,
she's shredded, bro.
Absolutely ripped.
Yeah, I mean, both of these ladies are absolute beasts, though. Very good fight. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be interesting. You get to see Holly Holm return to the octagon. I'm super excited. I'm really looking forward to that fight. And then the next fight is also going to be just wow, crazy. We're getting back into the fights now where we got former guys that held the belt before. You got Calvin Kattar in the featherweight division facing off against Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain held the belt in the bantamweight division for a while until Sean O'Malley came in and took it away with the two-piece there. And that was a ridiculously good fight. I believe that one was in August of last year. And that was an extremely good fight. I'm excited to see Aljo get back out there. Calvin Kattar's been around for a while. Both of these guys have been around a good while, but I think I got to go with the Funk Master here.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one to predict, and I'm excited to see more what happens after the fight. I don't know if Aljamain Sterling is going to stay in the featherweight or go back bantamweight, and so that's what's interesting to me. Guys historically do better jumping up a weight class than cutting down, but I just don't know. Aljo is short for the featherweight division, so I think it'll be a great fight, but I'm more looking forward to see what Aljamain Sterling's future holds in the featherweight division, or in the UFC in general.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think he could probably stick with featherweight and make something work, especially if he wins this bout. I mean, don't sleep on Calvin Kattar, though. Calvin Kattar is the same guy that stood in there with Max Holloway during that fight when Max Holloway was literally talking to DC, telling DC he's the best boxer in the UFC, while looking at DC, throwing a punch, and then parrying and dodging all the punches coming from Kattar.
He's insane.
But Kattar was getting beat up that entire fight, throughout the entirety of it, and that fight still made it to decision. Yeah. So he's a tough guy.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that Calvin Kattar is going to get back into the win column after a decision loss against Josh Emmett and Arnold Allen by knockout victory over him. I think he's going to jump back in the win column here against Aljo.
So you got Calvin Kattar over Aljo?
Yeah, I really honestly believe that Aljo's for the bantamweight division. I think the featherweight division is going to be too much for him. But we'll see. He's a great fighter.
We spoke about featherweight a minute ago about how stacked the division is getting at this point. And to see these two guys facing off, that should go to prove to you something. But I got to say, I strongly disagree with you there, Jude. I definitely 110% all day I've put the mortgage on Aljo.
Well, it's hard to...
Aljamain, I think he's got it. Just because the guy's held the belt. You know, Calvin Kattar hasn't got to that point yet. And I don't think he's going to reach that status, unfortunately, because he's a great fighter. I'm not knocking the guy, and I'm not saying that he can't beat Aljo, because I think this is going to be a very interesting fight, and it could swing either way. But personally, I strongly feel like Aljo's got this one in the bag.
Yeah, but Aljo, he's coming up to featherweight, and I don't know if he's ready for the big dogs of featherweight, personally.
I don't know. Only time will tell. I guess we'll see tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah.
Only time will tell. I'm excited. I'll tell you what, man. For everybody listening to the podcast today, I'm super excited for you guys to be able to watch this event. Hopefully you get the chance to watch it, or at least go back and rewatch the fights at some point, because this is just going to be so exciting. And that leads me up to the light heavyweight bout to end the prelims. Probably one of my favorite fighters all time. You got Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. I got to take Jiri here. I just don't understand why Jiri is the underdog. Even though it's pretty close to pick'em odds, they still have Jiri as the dog. He's at plus 100 odds. And I can't go against him. I think the guy's a beast. You know, he's super skillful. I like the fade he's got. I like the hair thing that he got going. He's had that going for the last few years. That's super sick. And he's not a very active fighter, which is the only thing I wish I could see more out of him, is just see him fight a little bit more. But when the guy comes out there, he comes out headhunting, and all of his strikes come from super weird angles. He's very hard to defend against. You've seen everybody he's ever fought have trouble, at least throughout the first round, figuring out how to defend his punches. Just because the angle he throws from, he's very similar to like a Michael Venom Page or like an Anderson Silva guy, except he's not hands all the way down by the waist. His hands are like mid-level with him, but they come from wherever he wants to put them at.
And yeah, I agree with you on this fight. Jiri, I think, should be the favorite here. I don't see why he's the dog. I think that Rakic could be very good in the future. I just don't know. It's tough to pick against Jiri. I would like to see him more active, like you said, but he holds the advantage, 2-inch reach advantage in this fight, and has almost every advantage in every category. Now, that doesn't always mean that he's going to win the fight, but it's tough to bet against Jiri. And I think Jiri's going to get in the win column with this one, with his 30th win.
Yeah, I mean, he's nasty, bro. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to beat Jiri. It's hard to bet against Jiri. And like I said before, he's one of my favorite fighters. It's going to be a very interesting bout for the light heavyweight to end off the prelims, is what I think. And I definitely got to lean Jiri here.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Now, to kick off the main card, this is the only thing in this entire fight card that I maybe disagreed with Dana White on. And given Bo Nickel has had his past, I want to say like 3 or 4 fights have been on a main card. But is he main card worthy for 300, especially considering he's facing an opponent like Cody Brundage, which, no disrespect to him, he's a great fighter and everything, but I just don't. Bo Nickel is the most heavily favored fighter in this fight at minus 2,100 odds as any fighter has ever been in UFC history. This would legitimately, if Brundage somehow, some way pulled this off, this would be the biggest upset in UFC history. And I just don't see that happening. Obviously, you have to go with Bo Nickel here, but it's not even worth messing around with, in my opinion. If you're a betting man, I wouldn't touch it, just because it's truthfully there's no value in it.
And Bo Nickel is a southpaw fighter, whereas Brundage is an orthodox fighter, which is another advantage I believe will work with Bo Nickel in this fight. And Bo Nickel, I mean, you just can't say enough about the guy. Get this guy some contenders to fight. I mean, He's had his way with every single fighter. And a fight I'd really love to see is Bo Nickel versus Khamzat, because that should have been this fight card to me. I know Khamzat versus Whitaker is going to be a great fight, but those are two fighters so similar, and I would have really loved that. I think that would have sent UFC 300 over the top. I know a lot of people disagree with me because Bo Nickel just don't have enough experience. But do we really need to just sit here and watch him just beat all these guys? I mean, he just destroys them, picks them up, carries them around the octagon. It's not even fun to watch. They said he couldn't win by knockout. He comes out, he wins by knockout. He just does what he wants. I mean, he has his way in the octagon. Just give him somebody.
He's got total control when he's in there. And that's the only reason I disagree with this being in the main card and to open up the main card of UFC 300 is just because they don't have a good enough contender in there, I feel like. And like I said, no disrespect to Brundage. He's a great fighter. But to throw him in there against a guy like Bo Nickel is just hard. Like, you want to see Bo Nickel. If you're going to see Bo Nickel fight in the main card of UFC 300, which Dana promises is going to be the biggest, best, baddest event in UFC history, I just don't understand how he is ahead of a guy like Jiri. He's ahead of a guy like Aljo, who Aljo literally held the belt, 7-8 months ago?
Yeah.
He was literally the champion of the UFC, and you got this guy that's fought 3, 4, 5 fights in the UFC, and he's he's opening up the main card. That's the only thing I disagree with here.
And against Cody Brundage, like, you got to give him somebody, and I'm not disrespecting Cody Brundage. He's going to be great later in his career, but it's just too early for him to fight. Bo Nickel's on such a streak. He's had his way. I think he deserves somebody this up there at the top of the rankings in the middleweight. I think that give him a fight, that test him. I want to see him test it because he hasn't proved much, but what he's proved is he's going to take care of business in these fights. Hats off to Cody Brundage, though, for taking this fight. He doesn't seem scared at all. A lot of people decline Bo Nickel's fight. That's one of the reasons he's not as active as he could be, because a lot of people decline his fights.
Which literally just proves how great that he is at the sport. But is also unfortunate because you do have him getting, or you do have the top guys getting offers to fight Bo Nickel, but they won't take it. And it's not because he's not legitimate enough. It's literally because he's too damn good.
I think we need Hamzat Bo Nickel. I think it'd be a great fight.
I couldn't agree more. If you had Hamzat Bo Nickel, that could literally run this card. It could be the main event. But, you know, I disagree just because of the talent difference here and to open up the main card. I mean, it's just gonna. I understand the UFC might want to start it off with a finish, and Bo Nickel's going to get that finish here. If you're going to take anything, Bo Nickel to get the finish, whatever way you want to take it.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, the next fight is one that really excites me as well. It's a lightweight bout. It's the number 1 lightweight contender versus number 4 lightweight contender. Charles Do Bronx Oliveira is going to be facing off against Arman Sarukian, sorry. And I just do not, it can't cross my mind, and whenever it does, it doesn't cross my mind right. Why is Oliveira the dog in this fight? Like, I understand that Arman has only 3 losses on his record, only 3 blemishes. He's 21-3 all time. Charles has been around for a while, but I just don't see him beating Do Bronx here. I got to go Charles Oliveira without any doubt in my mind.
Yeah, give me Do Bronx, lock of the night. I think Do Bronx is going to take care of business here. Arman, great fighter, could be insanely good, could run the lightweight division in the future. Oliveira, though, he's had that 1 loss for the belt, but other than that, and it was to Islam, it's not like he got handled. I mean, he competed in that fight. He could easily still have the belt.
He got beat by the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC right now.
Why is he not the favorite here? Is it because he's too old? He's only 34. I mean, he's still got a solid 3 years. Charles Oliveira's ran the lightweight division. Insanely good guy. He can get it done by knockout, and he's so good at forcing you to come to the ground with him. And then he lets you out. He lets you think that you have a better position. Next thing you know, he's on your back. And once he's on your back, it doesn't matter. Stand up, back flop, whatever you need to do. He's not letting go.
Yeah, if Charles Oliveira takes your back,
you're going to sleep every time.
It doesn't. I mean, I've seen him. The one fight that I've seen him take somebody's back on and not get it immediately was Dustin Poirier.
And he
got Poirier from the back. Then Poirier shakes him off. And as soon as Poirier shakes him off, Poirier didn't even get stood back up well from shaking him off his back. And he was back on his back again, rolling him over.
And that's what he's been so great at in his career, is getting on people's back. And you can get so much offense done that way. But unlike guys like Colby Covington, he gets on your back and he goes to work. He's constantly working. He's throwing punches. And it's impossible to punch a guy. He doesn't have to play defense. He's just a strictly one of the most offensive fighters we've seen in the UFC. He's constantly working for a finish, constantly hitting your head, constantly elbowing you. It's just impossible. And once he's on your back, it's over. You can just go home.
Yeah, but, you know, call mommy, bro, because you're going to get hurt.
Or better hope the bell rings.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that can come in there and save you other than yourself tapping out of that bell ringing. Because if he takes your back, write it off. It's over with. But the next fight of the night, in my opinion, lock it in. That one right there is going to be one of these guys are going to be cutting off the bonus checks. These guys are going to be feeding their families for sure. This is going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be wild. It's going to be disgusting. It's going to be nasty. Put your kids to sleep. Wake them back up for the next fight. This is going to be a crazy fight. And I don't think anybody could change my mind about that. It's the fight for the BMF belt. And if you don't know what BMF stands for, look it up or probably figure it out because it shouldn't be that hard. But it is the BMF belt fight between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. Personally, I'm not sure where I'm leaning in this fight, but like I just said, this fight is going to be an absolute bloodbath. Blood will be shed. Guys are going to get cut. There's going to be blood all over that octagon. Like Jude said before, paint the octagon red just because it's not going to do you any good to paint it any other color. Because by the time this fight is over, they're going to make the canvas their own canvas of blood. I promise you, this is going to be crazy.
No, strictly offense. They're just going to go punch for punch. I don't expect to see any defense in this fight. The only defense is a guy's face getting hit. So, I mean, it's just who can take more damage. And I think historically, Max Holloway doesn't do good coming up to lightweight. So give me Justin Gaethje in this fight. insane win streak. And give me Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier Part 2 for the title when Dustin Poirier takes that title from Islam, baby.
I believe that. I think Dustin's
By
got
Gilly.
a shot.
By Gilly,
Jump
baby.
at Gilly.
By
Don't
Gilly.
be silly. Jump that Gilly. But honestly, I hate to do it. I think Gaethje is probably going to win. But deep down in my heart, I just can't pick against Max Blessed Holloway.
No, and I understand.
So I have to go Holloway here just because my heart won't let me go against him. You know, I'm probably legitimately going to shed a tear if Holloway loses this fight.
Yeah, and these
He's
guys,
a stand-up guy, and I think both of these fighters, first and foremost, I think both of these fighters very well represent what it is to be a BMF.
yeah, no,
Either one of
doubt.
them that comes out on top of this fight is truthfully a BMF, and I think both of these guys before the fight, before the belt gets handed out to anybody, are both BMFs.
And definitely on paper, this could be one of the greatest UFC fights in history. It's definitely got that potential. Right now, I think it's obvious Robbie Lawler, Laurie McDonald too would probably be the greatest. But this could be that. This could top that.
I think it very well could. I mean, Holloway's absorbed the most significant strikes without ever being knocked down. He's never been knocked down in his career. He's landed the most significant strikes in UFC history, landed the most strikes in UFC history, landed the most strikes in a single fight in UFC history, and landed the most significant strikes in a single fight in UFC history. That's why I think it's hard to bet against the guy. I mean, you already know I'm the best boxer in UFC, baby. That's that man. That is him. He is him. He is that guy. And he is Max Blessed Holloway.
And he does have the power of the floral shorts, baby. The custom floral shorts for this fight.
So before we get to the next fight, I want to talk about that because that completely slipped my mind. How do you feel about these custom shorts that these fighters are getting?
I like it. Bryce Mitchell with camo started it, and then Sean O'Malley with the pink, and I think it's really cool. I liked when they used to do sponsorships on the shorts. It gives the fighters creativity, makes it kind of more fun. It gives you something extra to look at because who just wants to watch a guy in black and a guy in white fight all night?
Right.
I mean, or a guy in blue or red. Like, I want to see some custom shorts, some camos. I want to see all that stuff.
I'm excited because, I mean, the majority of the fighters on this card have received custom shorts for the fight.
Man, I love it.
They all look super sick. Like, we're going to get into him in a little while, or pause. We're going to talk about Pereira in a little while.
Whoa. Whoa. Okay.
We're
not
gonna
that
talk
kind of podcast. Not that website.
No, I promise. No Diddy. We're going to talk about Pereira in a little while. But his shorts, I think, are probably the sickest ones. Anyways, the next fight that we have on the list, and it is going to be the co-main, is a women's strawweight title bout with Zhang Weili, who is absolute beast, an absolute tank in the women's division. I truthfully love to watch her fight, versus Yan Xiaonan. And sorry if I didn't pronounce that last name right. I don't believe I did, but that's just bad journalism on my part, I suppose. Personally, I have to go with Zhang Weili here. I don't think there's any way she loses, and I honestly would probably take her to get a finish.
Yeah, and I think it goes to decision. I think a lot of women's title fights goes to decision. Zhang Weili, always hungry for a finish. Probably one of the greatest women's sports athletes in any sport of all time. You hear it so often. It's really people underestimate how athletic she is. She could be one of the best athletes in UFC history. She just gets up so high. She's so explosive. She could be playing a number of sports. I think she could go pro in the WNBA, women's tennis. It doesn't matter. She's just a pure athlete.
Yeah, I mean, she's an absolute tank. And one thing that's super cool about her, when she gets that finish, she does that little sideways cartwheel. No hands. She doesn't touch her hands on the ground and does a sideways cartwheel. Like, I know that's probably not that cool to most of the people listening, but that hypes me up. Like, because you know how bad I wish I could do that?
Yeah.
I know you probably wish you could. Like, just, dude, think about it. Like, just imagine, like, you're walking through campus one day, like, going to class, and you're just like, you know what? Watch this. That's kind of riz, you know? Mean, like, you pop the backpack off, and you kind of hit the little side cartwheel, no hands. Like,
I mean, I could probably do it if I tried, but I'm not going to try that because I don't want to embarrass other people around me. But
yeah.
I could probably do it, but.
I mean, I'm not even going to give myself that kind of hype. I know for a fact. I mean, some of you guys listening right now probably know who I am personally and stuff like that. So, I mean, Just imagine me doing a cartwheel, and that's what I want you to picture while you're listening to this episode.
Not a good sight.
I'll tell you what, if we get to 10K subscribers by my birthday in 2025, May of 2025, if we have 10K subscribers on YouTube, I'll do a sideways cartwheel. I will practice and I will learn it. And if we hit 10K subscribers, as soon as we do, I will begin to practice it. And I will post every day on the Outside the Octagon Instagram until I perfect it. And I will do that shit. As a matter of fact, shake on it, Jude. Hold on 1 second.
I look forward to seeing that one. Well, actually, I don't. I don't know if my eyes can even see that. It's going to be ugly.
It's going to be like the Black Crowes song, Hard to Handle there.
But back to the fight, because we got a little off topic there. But, it's all good. Outside the Octagon,
that's
baby.
What we do here.
So just make it a little interesting. But Zhang Weili, also a switch stance fighter. I love watching switch stance fighters. It's a lot of times it's very interesting to watch these switch stance fighters.
Yeah, because they literally could piece you up either way. Like her left is just as dominant as her right, and that's super fun to watch, especially because she's also very good with her legs. She could kick very well.
Hard to beat a person that can go switch stance.
If she could switch those stances up and then keep leg kick you with the left a couple times, leg kick you with the right, go 1-2 with the head or something, maybe cut a couple uppercuts in there. She's a scary fighter, bro.
And she will.
And she definitely will. I'm giving y'all the full scouting report right now. Zhang Weili is going to win, and I don't think it's going to go to decision. Even though typically the women's title fights do have a tendency to go the distance, I don't think this is going to be one of those. I don't think this is going to follow history.
Yeah, and I think Zhang Weili, heavy favorite in this fight, and for great reason. I don't think she loses this fight, but I could see it going to decision. So we'll see.
And now, just like the Outside the Octagon podcast, it is the main event of the evening. This one is something that a lot of people are complaining about. A lot of people didn't think this was going to be the main card for 300. A lot of people say it's not the best card. A lot of people say this one ruined the card. It wasn't the best title fight that you could have had. It wasn't the best main event you could have had. Throw that out. This is an incredible fight. And this is just going to top off an incredible night, an incredible Saturday, April 13th. You're not going to want to miss it. This is going to be probably one of the greatest light heavyweight title bouts that we've ever seen. You got Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill, the challenger, facing off against the champ, Alex Poatan Pereira. And I feel like I already know what Jude's going to say on this prediction. So let me go ahead and say I strongly disagree with whatever you're going to hear next. But I have Poatan winning this fight.
Yeah, I think there's no chance in Poatan's dreams that he wins this fight. Sweet dreams that's going to put him to sleep, just like Riff Raff said, baby. Sweet dreams going to come out. He's going to win this fight early on. I don't think it makes it past the second round. No matter who you pick, these guys are going to come out swinging. They're light heavyweights, but they fight like the biggest heavyweights in the world. They're going to get a knockout. They're going to get a finish in this fight. Going to be incredible. Don't blink or you might miss it, baby.
This is definitely a finish fight. I totally agree with that. I strongly disagree with who you have winning this, though. I mean, Poatan just speed ran the UFC, man. Like he's a 2-division champ, and he has 11 fights in his career.
Yeah, but there ain't a horse that ain't been rode and a cowboy that ain't been throwed. A lot of people don't give Jamal Hill his respect. He's on a 4-fight win streak, all by knockout, other than his last win, which was by unanimous decision as well. Guy's insane. I don't know why he doesn't get his respect. I think he's going to advance to a 5-fight win streak with a knockout win over Pereira.
And another thing is he did, for a while there, hold the belt. Although that he had the terrible Achilles heel injury, which is just such a sad thing to see happen to a fighter, which truthfully is my main reason that I think that Jamal Hill is not going to be able to get the win here. Just because I don't think he had enough time to rehab that, because that's a tough injury to take, unless he was on some Aaron Rodgers shit and was smoking some ayahuasca.
and I definitely
down in South America somewhere,
I definitely get that. This will be his first fight coming off the injury. Maybe not an ideal fight for Jamal Hill to take coming off the Achilles injury. They are similar in reach, same exact reach. Orthodox versus Southpaw matchup with Jamal Hill being the Southpaw and Pereira obviously being the Orthodox. Think it's going to be a great fight. There's so many similarities here. One of those similarities is that both these guys knock guys out. I mean, they put guys to sleep. There's a reason they call them sweet dreams. And there's a reason Pereira's holding the title after only 11 fights in MMA.
Right. I mean, I don't know this. If you don't think that this is the best main card for UFC 300, you're wrong.
And I think it's going to show in the future.
Because, I mean, obviously, like, you literally see it here listening to the Outside the Octagon podcast. You see it. Or maybe not see it yet because we don't have a camera, but you hear us saying Jude and I are having a legitimate debate here almost over the fact of who we think is going to win this fight, which should just go to prove to you that this is an incredible fight. I'm not saying that Jude and I are absolute perfectionists and know everything that's going to happen in MMA, because it's truthfully one of the more unpredictable sports. But that should prove a point to you that this is a very good fight, because we cannot come to an agreement on who's going to win this thing, who's going to walk away with this title.
No, I don't see how anybody could look at this UFC 300 card and not say, at least on paper, not all fights go as planned, not all cards go as planned. It can look great and not be great, but at least on paper, one of the most impressive cards I've ever laid my eyes on.
I could not agree with that more. I'm so stoked for this fight, and I'm so excited for you guys to be able to watch it. And if you joined us here today and taking a listen to the Outside the Octagon podcast, from the bottom of my heart, I deeply thank you.
Yeah, we truly appreciate you, and we're going to show that appreciation in these upcoming giveaways. And I promise you, have some great giveaways planned, some great things for the fans, and we appreciate every single one of you guys.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, go spread the word about the podcast. Our Instagram is at Outside the Octagon Pod _. Our email is outsidetheoctagonpod@gmail.com. You can email us any questions you have. If you have something that you'd like for us to talk about in the episode, or the DMs are always open, of course, so you could hit the DMs and we will check out your DMs if you have any questions you'd like to be answered or any topics you'd like to be covered on the next episode. Or maybe even if you have a question you'd like for us to ask Liz at some point, or maybe one of the future guests, we could try to slide that in there.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to be taking y'all's guys' advice. You don't want to miss an episode, because every episode is the main event.
Every episode is the main event. And like I said, like Jude said, we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you listening to us, and hope you enjoyed the episode. Got any questions, any advice, hit the DMs, hit the email. You know where to find us. God bless you guys, and happy 300 fight week, I guess, huh?
Yeah, have a great time watching these fights. Don't blink, because you may miss something.
Right.
And make sure you watch this video so that way you can get all the expert picks in from me and Charleston.
Yeah, I mean, the expert picks are here. We laid it out in front of you. We broke down every single fight for UFC 300. And I think that we're going to be right, except for on the last one. One of us has to be wrong here, which kind of excites me. I'm kind of glad. It wasn't planned, but I am kind of glad that we disagreed on the main event.
That makes it
a little interesting. We both got a little something to watch for here. One of us is going to be right, and one of us is going to be bragging next week on the next episode.
And that next episode is going to be an absolute banger, where we talk outside the octagon life with Liz Carmouche.
It's going to be super exciting. Great fighter, great person. Super excited to be able to speak with her, and I know you are as well, Jude.
Yeah, and so many more exciting guests coming after. So This is just the beginning.
This is just the start, and it's only right to have the trailblazer of women's MMA be the trailblazer for the first guest Outside the Octagon.
Yes, sir. Couldn't start any better.
I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to speaking to her. And thank you guys so much for listening. That is going to wrap up the very first full-length episode of the Outside the Octagon podcast.